Welcome to How to Trade the Election, the beginner's guide to capitalizing on the election results with your host, me, Michael A. Ford. Let's go. All right, if you're joining us today, this presentation, I will be showing you all of the ins and outs of what to take in consideration before and during trading during an election season. Because guess what? Just because a president is chosen does not necessarily mean all your considerations are done, especially if you are planning on investing in the years to come. And first, what you need to understand is where we are now and a little bit about actual elections. You know that January 20th every 4 years is inauguration day, and this can be a very stressful time, but it can also be very rewarding based on what research you've done and if you are planning on investing. So, if and or when a sitting president is removed from office, his beliefs go with that because of political parties and affiliations. Now, when we talk political parties and affiliations, most people will say red versus blue, donkey versus elephant, whatever, right? But this is the thing. You really need to pay attention to what these parties are for and against. And it's not your particular party or affiliation, it is what the party or affiliation that's taking over office. Okay? What does their agenda look like? What do they stand for? What do they want to do away with? Okay? These are the things that we need to consider when talking about where we want to move our money, where we want to continue investing, and so forth. And sometimes these paths cross, such as your political party path, your societal path, and your investing path. Let's see some examples. First, let's consider gun laws. One political party may be for gun laws. They want more stringent gun laws. They want it to be impossible for you to purchase weapons. Does that make it more lucrative for a gun company or less lucrative, right? Those are questions you should ask yourself. If the other party is less stringent on gun laws, they want more relaxed gun laws, they want you to be able to purchase whatever you want, then gun companies will become more lucrative because more people will be going out buying it. And then if you notice, this is how the three paths cross. Political agenda, less stringent gun law. Societal path, people can go out buying the guns. Investing path, these companies are benefiting from the agenda that was set by the political party. Next, let's look at medical care. What political party is for medical care? And this can be privatized versus a social construct such as Obamacare. These are things to consider because if you are in the medical market, if you were looking at medical stocks, things like that, then you want to see if that political party that's coming into office is for or against it. And then next we look at public safety reformations. Now, when I think public safety reformation, I don't know about you, but I think police reform, and it goes beyond that. And most people will say, well, that's a local government type of deal, right? Well, the thing is, when your federal government and your federal party is coming up and they're telling you they're for this police reform, you're going to have a huge backing behind it, and your local governments typically follow suit. So, looking at what is going on the grand scheme of the political parties and their agendas, we can see that there's going to be your local municipalities that are going to be affected directly. So definitely looking at what this agenda is for these political parties is going to help you prevent you from spending and investing money that can go nowhere. Okay. Now, what to watch? Now, a lot of people, they want to know, all right, Mike, what stocks do I actually watch? I get it. You want me to learn about inauguration day, but what do I need to watch? Well, listen, I'm going to tell you just like this. There's several different industries affected directly by what happens with the political elections, but I'll give you an example. If you're looking at one political party saying they want to reduce fracking or they want to go more fusion, they want to, they want to change to solar versus, you know, um, coal mining. Doesn't that affect the market? I think so. Okay. So, what I mean by that is you need to see what is associated with the election cycle because, therefore, no matter who wins the election, there are certain industries that can benefit. When we break this down, the larger industries they usually fit into a category. I put three categories up here. There are several that you can look at, but startups. The reason why I put startups is because guess what? In 2008, 2009, during the Obama election, we were looking at a company called Zoom. We were looking at a company called Snapchat. There were several different startup companies that were just blooming during the election season. And when it's an election season, if you notice, more things get highlighted, and companies can typically grow from an election season or they can sink. So, definitely looking at startups during an election season is very, very good. Tech companies, definitely, you always want to make sure you look at your tech companies. There's a lot of cloud computing software companies that came out in that election as well. And a lot of people didn't even know what cloud was. Like, what is cloud? Who's in the cloud? But you want to pay attention to those. Like they have Bitcoin, wasn't a tech company, but just looking at cryptocurrency, how it's moved from a sub penny to 17, $18,000. Looking at it today will help you tomorrow at different industries. Pharmaceuticals, same thing. If Pfizer was coming out with a cure for, say, a pandemic during the election season, it's going to get highlighted even more. Maybe it's a good time to invest in that pharmaceutical company. Okay, so just watching and just having a good ear to the ground and seeing what is actually going on, you can definitely make some money from it as well. Speaking of money, let's look at the effects on the US dollar during an election season. Now, exchange rates will be affected heavily, and I'm not saying that you have to be in the foreign exchange market by no means. Nevertheless, as we all know, whatever happens in the foreign exchange market, that means the value of our dollar, the strength of our dollar is going to affect companies. It's going to affect spending. If the dollar loses its value, more people might want to hold on to their money and not spend it in the market, meaning that there's going to be some stagnant stocks out there or even declining stocks. The strength of the dollar is directly affected by the election because if the people that we don't want in office get in office, then then people are going to start holding their money. They're not going to want to invest their money. Different countries are banking on this election. Different countries will detract from spending money in the U.S. markets because they don't know the uncertainty of the election. You have to know what is going on globally and with the strength of the currency that you are watching because that is going to affect everything. It's a trickle effect going downhill. So yes, you definitely want to know the effect of the US dollar. In fact, after this presentation, I would ask that you go look up what the value of the US dollar is against other currencies right now. That's your homework for today, right? All right. But no, definitely you want to look at that, and you also want to look at current events. Socioeconomic effects of the election. Now, say for example, there was a pandemic, right? What does this new president and his cabinet members plan to do? Okay? What is happening before the election that we need to focus on? And how are they dealing with the current events? So if you have a sitting president, How has he dealt with these socioeconomic events that have been happening right now? Has he sat on his hands about it? Has she not done anything about it? These are questions you should ask yourself, because if this person is reelected, do you think that there's going to be any change? Okay. Let's look at some examples though. During the election, right? Let's look at 2020 March. I want to show you what happened in March of 2020 for this company, Zoom Video Communications. Okay, so March 19th, no, March 18th, President Trump announced the pandemic. Okay. Zoom video communications is a software used by several companies to communicate with their teams, communicate with their business partners, and it allows for members to work from home. Knowing what you know now, that socioeconomic event triggered the growth of several companies such as this one, because they were telling everybody to work from home. If you notice, it was stagnant for the months, actually the years leading up to this or 2020, when in March this stock took off from an average of $80 per share to roughly $560 at its crest. That is amazing, but it's a socio-economic event that you have to be able to identify and see how you can benefit. Okay? Now, pandemic, that's just one way. Or actually, we can go into the pandemic and actually look at what is happening in a pandemic. One thing, mask, no mask. Okay, so what companies develop masks? That's an easy one, right? Toiletries. When everyone was out buying toilet paper during the 2020 pandemic, my team and I were buying toilet paper companies. Okay, we were investing in Procter & Gamble and so forth, because those companies were growing or gaining because of the fact that everyone was out purchasing. Water is another one. Dasani, all of these, Aquafina, these companies were benefiting because everyone was stocking up on water. Medical equipment. Okay, I can keep going on this list, but the point is, you want to see where your money should be going, especially during times of crisis. Next, we have civil unrest. We're looking at socioeconomic issues. Civil unrest is a big one. We talked about ammunition, we talked about guns earlier, but there's so many things that happen with civil unrest. If the sitting president isn't doing anything about it, how are businesses affected? Right next to that, we have our small businesses. There's going to be closures. There are going to be lots of loans outstanding, which means that the price of their goods and services go up, which means that the average citizen is spending more on their small businesses and less in the market. Okay, supply and demand. If you run out of things, where are you getting them? That can make the market go up. These things you have to consider. Trade wars. This is a big one. Sanctions and tariffs on other countries. The cost of doing business, imports and exports. How does that affect you? It does, because of the fact that if countries such as China, or places such as China, where a lot of our imports and exports are going, if the sitting president has high sanctions on these countries, that means that our imports and exports will decline immensely and our businesses will be affected. And that can work conversely as well. Maybe high sanctions and tariffs on a country may cause us to look inward for our businesses and make our own businesses go up, where we can put our investments in there. Okay. But then we have next to that unemployment. Unemployment, your job availability. Is there going to be more jobs available, causing more businesses to be able to spread and do and invest more? Furloughs, layoffs, the need. Okay, there is these things you have to consider. You might say, well, unemployment, how does that affect me investing? Yes, it affects you investing because guess what? If you can't if you can't if you can't get the money to invest or other people don't invest along with you, then the market is going to be stagnant. And then you're going to need to stimulate the market, which is the next thing, stimulus, financial markets, your economic growth, your stability. You want to see what is going on with your election as far as what your Senate, your House, your president, the cabinet, where they are looking and where they aren't, because that's going to definitely affect how your money is growing or not growing. Because the worst thing you want is your money to either stay stagnant or decline. So that's why you have to know what's going on in these. Now, this is critical. The first 100 days. You might hear this a lot every time a president is elected, but this is the critical part about it. You need to know this information because you want to see where they're going next, okay? Which initiatives are new? You won't see these efforts in these first 100 days, then you're going to see throughout the rest of the term, if that makes sense. Because guess what? If you were trying to be a president, you were trying to be elected president, and you say, hey, there's a lot of poverty out there. We need to invest in an initiative to feed the homeless. That initiative is probably going to be in that first 100 days. And after that, it's probably going to be just disappeared, and you won't see it or you won't hear about it. So investing smartly, you can get in and get out and take advantage of these short-term opportunities. Because after that first year, after that first 100 days, most presidents are going to move away from these issues that helped them get elected. They're going to, go on their own agenda. As we mentioned earlier, we want to talk about their agenda. What do they plan on doing? Now, who will be picked for cabinet? For example, will it be someone from the energy sector? If that person is picked in the cabinet, they're going to look back at that energy sector and try to benefit them, which means that they're benefiting us as investors because we know already that, hey, this XYZ person came from the energy sector. They already had this plan for the energy sector had they been chosen. So let's move and look towards companies that are in that sector. Okay, other cabinet members have their own agendas as well, but the biggest thing is knowing that in that first 100 days, you can make some very great short-term investments based on where this party is looking, where this cabinet is looking, where the president is looking at putting his initiatives. And then we want to look at emerging markets. Now, emerging markets during this time, we kind of mentioned a little bit before about Zoom technology as an example, but what is being pushed and what is being denied? Emerging markets. Let's look at cannabis, for example. If cannabis was on a federal level at this point, and our political agendas were pushing for the legalization of cannabis, don't you think that that market itself would be highly lucrative had it been approved and pushed through federal legalization? The same could be said for solar, fusion, and other initiatives. If solar was pushed through as the primary energy source for federal government buildings, your military installations, fusion power, don't you think that that would directly affect markets in those arenas? Yes. The answer is yes. So definitely, My team and I are already looking at cannabis stocks. We're looking at solar stocks. We're looking at fusion stocks because based on who is sitting in office and who is coming on board, these might be hot topics and these are emerging markets you want to look out for. Next, we want to look at what is election proof. Because guess what? Everything doesn't revolve around the election, and we know that. But this is how you protect your portfolio. This is how you diversify your portfolio. Putting in some election proof stocks. If you already don't have them, you can consider these to be your diversification stocks. Telecommunications. We know that telecommunications won't be affected by the election. We know that infrastructure, rather it be your cloud computing infrastructure, where you keep all of your data and storage. Or you can talk physical infrastructure, such as your municipalities, your buildings. We can talk about your bases, things like that. They're election proof. They doesn't matter who comes in office, these are election proof. And then obviously your big tech companies, your Apple, your Microsoft, your Google. These are election proof because regardless of what's going to happen here, we're still going to use these companies. We're still going to go to these conglomerates for information. We still are going to eat because guess what? Whole Foods, Safeway, Shoppers, Smiths, whatever your food, Piggly Wiggly, whatever your food company is, you're going to still eat. So agriculture, food, these are going to be still election-proof companies, which means you can definitely invest in those, and they will keep you at an even till. Have you chose any other stocks that were during the election? Okay. Now, putting it all together, we want to do some takeaways. Watch your political party's interest. Watch the technology, the pharmaceuticals, the energy sectors. See who there's an uptick. I just showed you a slide where Zoom Technologies in March of 2020 went from $40 to $80 to $560 in a span of a few months, where it had been stagnant for years prior to that because of a socio-economic event. So paying attention to that, watching out for your startups, your emerging markets, you can do great things. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Said by the most intelligent man, Albert Einstein. Now listen, if you found this to be helpful, you found this to be a little bit of a nudge for you to get out there and start researching, then I highly advise you join us at Stocks Made Simple by clicking the link below. And you know what? I'm here at this point where I'm actually going to give you 50% off of any of our services that we have on a monthly basis. And I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to throw in an extra 14 days free so you can test out the rest of our products, see what you like, see what you don't like. So, as I said, I'm going to give you 14 days free trial to check out just by clicking the link below. And 50% on our monthly services. 50% off on our monthly services. So, let's level up.